Thank you all so much for coming today, braving this weather. It's a great turnout, thank you. My name is Daniel Fiverson, and I am an evolutionary astrologer here in Santa Fe. Anybody know what this word means? Not Gershon, not Leslie. It's Yiddish, it means madness, okay? I think we're all here for the same reason. We're here to find out how the heck we're gonna get through all this mishigas. How's it all going to work out? So what I'd like to do is take a little bit of break from this heavy Capricorn, patriarchal, Saturn, Pluto, ponderous energy, and talking about some lunar energy. Let's talk about some night energy. Talk about some feminine energy. Talk about how the night pervades our awareness. Jason's here in spirit because he's the one who's told me so many times that when we look at polarities, we talk about signs, or we talk about yin and yang, we're not talking about male and female, we're really talking about day and night. We're really talking about day and night. It really is a context that gives us a much greater understanding because, male and females, words that's really loaded with meaning. And, once you have something named, you cease to have any additional learning about it. So if we look at it as night and day, I think it'll open up a whole different perspective on how we can understand some of these planetary dynamics and how they affect us and which part of us they're really working with. For instance, during the day, there's just a single star in the sky. At night, it's a multitude of stars. Right there, we can see the difference and how we are affected, as the cycles move. And we're also seeing these cycles of day and night, perhaps dark and light, unfolding in our world around us. We all have experienced, unfortunately, a darker movement around the planet in the Philippines, Brazil, China, Russia, and dare I say in the United States, of something called authoritarianism. Clearly it's a Saturn-Pluto dynamic. But I also see a second wave that is unfolding. It's been characterized as the blue wave. Blue wave, doesn't that sound like Neptune? Neptune, or the deepest repository of our dreams, our visions, our hopes, and it's where we hide all our fears and our terrors. What we're witnessing is a wave that's led by women. Women who are seizing the streets, seizing Congress, seizing the state legislatures, seizing the headlines. Standing Rock showed us that Native Americans are also reclaiming their sovereignty. They're reclaiming their unity. It's over 150 years since the end of the Civil War, and African Americans are still defending themselves from vicious racial attack. Hispanics, who were the original part of our culture, who were the original families who were here when this country was founded, are being told, or being held at the border and being told that they're aliens. And students, which may be the most disconcerting, Michael addressed it, students themselves are just asking for nothing more than a safe, gun-free school. This is what we're dealing with. But women are leading the way. We all came into this world through our mothers, so are we surprised? Do you think they forgot about us? They haven't. How many of you are familiar with the asteroid Pallas Athena? All right, I'm glad I'm doing this talk. Everybody will be more aware of her when we leave here today. It's been suggested that a man should not be up here talking about goddesses. We're all to some degree androgynous, okay? We both hold day and night energy within us. But we also hold twilight energy. And that twilight energy is the constant connection-seeking wanderer Mercury, who moves between the liminal spaces, between day and night, and synthesizes these polarities. Men have asteroids, goddess asteroids in their charts too. In the epic Greek poems of the Iliad and the Odyssey, Homer describes how Pallas Athena repeatedly advised the heroes, both the Trojans and the Greeks in the Trojan War, how to meet their destinies, and how she patiently, faithfully, and persistently guided Odysseus home on his long 10-year odyssey to find his way back home. I have also had the blessings of goddesses in my life. And thankfully, I've had the accidental wisdom to learn from them. So let's look at how all this correlates astrologically. For the most part, astrology tells us that Pallas was the goddess most engaged with mortals. Demeter, Ceres, always disguised herself when she appeared to mortals. Hestia, or Vesta, to the Romans, only engaged with those who Hermes brought directly to her door. And Hera, or Juno, was too involved with heroic and God and immortal dramas to be involved with mortals, with humans. Pallas Athena was the goddess who was engaged and openly appeared to mortals in the stories. She was the daughter of Zeus. She was born parthenogenically from his head, from his crown chakra. She was known alternatively as the Virgin, the Unwearying, she who fights in front. She fought alongside Mars in battle. She was his sister. And she was of the city. She was of the community. She was very much community-oriented. She was part of the entire collective. She was the goddess of wisdom, and she was a strategist. And basically what she's about is seeing the big picture. Pallas saw the whole enchilada, and then would take all the little pieces and figure out how they worked within that model. And she was a warrior activist, but she would always try to negotiate peace before going to battle. But she would never fear to pick up her shield or her spear. She was a patroness and a protectress. She was the patron saint of and it was believed that she protected them. She was their protector, just as Ares was in the male role in Rome, Mars. Astrologically, very interestingly, she is an octave transformer. There are octaves of planets. Mercury is known as the lower mind, the lower octave. The higher octave of Mercury is Uranus, which is the higher mind. Pallas Athena is the dynamic, is the transformational link between Uranus and Mercury. And she allows the Uranian, Uranus are those thoughts that come to us of their own volition, things that come to us out of left field, which I would suggest everybody in this room pays attention to whatever comes to them out of left field. Pallas Athena was able to synthesize those two and pull down those inspirations from the higher mind down into Mercury and ground them and make them practical. Jane Fonda, Madonna, Judy Collins, Grace Kelly, Nancy Reagan, Patty Hearst, Oprah Winfrey, Sandra Day O'Connor, and Amelia Earhart all had Pallas prominent in their charts. And Pallas informs men as well. For example, Dane Rudhyar, Leonardo da Vinci, David Bowie, George Harrison, Muhammad Ali, and John Lennon. So these are the actual, this is the transit of Pallas this year, just to have this on record for anybody who wants to track this through their chart. It started off 21 degrees of Libra at the beginning of the year. It'll end up at 23 Sag, but she will go station retrograde on February 18th at the very last degree of Libra. She will station direct at 10. She will go back to 10 degrees of Libra until May 30th, and then she'll ingress Scorpio in August and ingress Sagittarius in November. So why is all this important? I'm going to show you in a couple of charts and through these transits what is actually happening right now with Pallas and why I've chosen her for the topic today and why I think that we need to at least be aware of it, because she offers the remedies, she offers the path out of this. She shows us and will inform us what we need to do to work through this Mishigas. So she was conjunct the lunar south node, and I'm going to explain to you, if anybody's not familiar with the nodes, I'm going to explain what some of this means. She was conjunct the lunar south node and Neptune in Pisces at the time of the Women's March in 2017. She was conjunct the lunar north node during the July eclipse season in 2018. She was there for both eclipses, which meant that she was part of the eclipse. She was embedded into the eclipse energy. From January through August of this year, she will square the lunar nodes, and that's a special condition that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And as a matter of fact, at the total lunar eclipse that's going to occur next weekend, it will be visible in all of North and South America. She's going to square the lunar nodes, creating a cardinal grand cross. I think the most significant event of all is that in December of 2020, when we have the major conjunction, the stellium of Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, Pallas will be there within 4 degrees of Saturn in Aquarius. And we're going to look at that chart. So why is it so significant that she is activating the lunar nodes? The lunar nodes are our evolutionary karmic axis. It's our life path. It is our trajectory in the chart shows it to us. It's our trajectory from past to future. So the south node is the composite of all of our former moons, which means that it's our habitual way of behaving. It's our default place, our default center of gravity, if you would, that we automatically go to without even thinking in terms of our emotional nature. It's what everything that we have held in our emotional body as a result of all the emotional experiences of our most recent lifetimes. I kind of, I have fate here with a question mark. I think fate and destiny is another whole topic of discussion, but I categorize it as fate because these are the circumstances and relationships that show up in our life, and we call it fate. It's not fate. It's what we have planned to experience. We just didn't know it until it showed up. The lunar north node is the future, but I call it a probable future because we are human beings. We have consciousness. The choice that we make in this moment is going to determine what happens in the next moment. I don't personally hold astrology to be well served as a prophetic science. It's a predictive science because we make choices. It's very fluid, the way that the future works. But the lunar north node is a point in the chart that is facilitated, that is primed to go in a certain direction. I categorize it, I call it a magical moving sidewalk. It's like the moving walkway at the airport. We get to the airport, I love this analogy, we have 2 suitcases. One is so heavy, we're dragging it on the floor, it's all our lessons. The other is so light, we don't even know we have it. It's the gifts and things that we've accomplished in our fruitions. But we take one step onto that moving walkway at the airport, and it takes us the distance to our gate. I've oversimplified it, certainly, because there's certainly more effort involved. But what's important here is that the North Node requires our engagement. We will be drawn to it regardless of what happens. We will find ourselves in circumstances which clearly relate to it, but we may not realize it. We may not be proactive. We may be reactive. When we proactively approach the lunar North Node, this is when we actually move ourselves forward consciously. So this is the chart for the eclipse that's coming up, and I'm just going to kind of walk through a little bit of what's going on here. As I said, Pallas opposes Uranus and Eris, and it's important to note that Uranus and Eris have been conjunct since 2015, and it's probably responsible for most of the deep changes that have occurred in our culture. It's really what's pulled I don't want to say pulled the rug out from under us. That's a Pluto word, but it's what's shattered everything that we have taken to consider to be solid. Uranus and Eris are quite a combination. So they're opposing the lunar nodes. Squaring the lunar nodes. The eclipse is magnified. Michael talked about it. The Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Pluto stellium. Quite intense. And we have in the chart this is the chart that's cast for Washington, D.C., it's the chart for the United States. we have the moon and the north node right on the midheaven. And significantly, Mercury, like I said, Mercury forms the tightest, so it's within 1 degree, within 1 degree of the south node. Remember, Mercury is the synthesizer. Mercury is our twilight activity. So the condition of a skip step is an evolutionary astrology concept that's quite important. When a planet squares the lunar nodes, it indicates that the dynamic that correlates to that planetary position has not been resolved prior to this lifetime. It's something that, for whatever reason, has been denied, dismissed, avoided, backburnered. There's no judgment here. We all do it. Sometimes it was too hard. Sometimes it was somebody else who denied it to us or prevented us from doing it. But in this lifetime, it's become a karmic necessity. It's become an evolutionary imperative, literally, to resolve this issue. And so, what does this mean? Uranus is about individuation. It's about finding our individuality. It's about really expressing our own uniqueness and our own individuality and genius, if you would, as part of the collective. To me, it's the higher octave of Leo, in a sense. It's its polarity. Leo is our personality. It's our persona, but it's very personal. Uranus is not personal. Uranus has us in groups and in society, and each of us has some role in that society. And Uranus wants us to find that place where we actually bring our gift. Each of us has gifts. Uranus is our gift. And Uranus is asking us to bring that gift to the collective, to show to the collective that there is something more than just going to work every day and coming home and watching television and, drinking margaritas. So I wouldn't fault them. So I think the other significant thing here is, I don't have it circled, but Neptune is in a square to Jupiter. Jason was going to address this, but Neptune is also sesqui-squaring and semi-squaring, which are two challenging aspects to the lunar nodes. They're exact. So we have this very strong Neptunian influence going on here with the evolutionary unfoldment of our country, ourselves, our entire culture, the entire planet. What this means is that truth is elusive. Neptune is about truth, and squaring Jupiter, we're searching for it. We're having trouble finding it. There's a strong probability of political machinations going on behind the scenes. That time will reveal. What we can expect for sure are more unusually disruptive events in the news and potentially in our own personal lives, especially if you have planets around 0 degrees of Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, cardinal signs. It's about balancing our own needs with the needs of the collective. And are we listening to our heart or our head? We have two intelligent organs in our body, head and heart. Our head will analyze, paralyze, will tell us, no, you have to keep doing this, you have a car payment, you have a mortgage payment, you have this and that. Our heart will tell us what it is that we really want to do, and it will never deceive us. It will never lead us in the wrong direction, even when it seems that our heart and our head are not saying the same thing. Where have we relinquished authority? And where have we relinquished, not taken responsibility? And I think certainly in this country, if we look around, that is like really blatant. We're having consciousness-raising experiences through our journey in the underworld. It's all good. We're going to learn something from this. This is what I've been talking about and why this is important. So you see that we have back in last July, we had the eclipses, we had Pallas conjunct the south node, we have it squaring the nodes all through this year, 3 times, okay? And in black here, these dark transits are the famous outer transits that we've been talking about, Saturn, Jupiter, to Pluto and each other. And in between, we see these other transits. This is Pallas conjuncting Jupiter 3 times, conjuncting Pluto 3 times because we'll see in the next chart, Pallas starts out down here somewhere and goes up and then retrogrades exactly over these planets 3 times around the time of the stellium. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm going to ask this question. I'm sure everybody's going to raise their hand. Is there anybody who is not, nobody will raise their hand. Is there anybody who's not familiar with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez by now? No? Right. She is an American politician and educator, just for the record. She's the U.S. representative-elect from the 14th District of New York, who was elected on November 6th, beating the Democratic Party chair. It was described as the biggest upset in the 2018 midterm elections. This is a cardinal chart. There are actually three separate cardinal crosses here. I have to differentiate them, but they basically are chained and they're working together. Her moon is exactly conjunct. It's within 8 minutes of Pallas Athena in her 3rd house, her house of her voice, how she expresses herself in the world. The sun squares Uranus, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, stellium in her 1st house. And the moon and Pallas are tightly opposed. Actually, it's the tightest aspect in the chart, besides this one, is Mercury, also opposing the moon and Eris. And Mars squares Jupiter. Where's your Jupiter? And squares Saturn, Neptune, opposing Eris. So remember the blue wave reference to Neptune? Neptune is right there in her 1st house, conjunct all these heavy outer planets. And Vesta being her own personal authenticity and her sacred bond to herself. Neptune squares her sun and her moon. Okay, so she is driven by her visions. The visions that she is seeing are not only embedded in her emotional body, but they're part of her persona, and she can't release from them. She must hear their call. It's a crisis for her. There's no question. Neptune also squares Mars in her 9th house, squares Pallas in her 3rd house, bringing out her voice, bringing out her need to find the truth. And Neptune also in this chart makes exact challenging aspects to her lunar nodes. So we're seeing, all of these energies that I've described are in her chart. It's interesting that, it was said that if Einstein had not discovered the theory of relativity, somebody else would have. Charles Darwin and a man named Alfred Russell, I can't remember his last name, actually discovered the theory of evolution simultaneously and independently of each other and delivered their paper together. They had no idea that the other one was working on the project. These energies are available to us. She's the surrogate for this. She has received them, but all of us can do it. If she didn't hear it, somebody else would have, or anybody in this room could have done it as well. The energies are out there. It's just a question of whether our transmitter is receiving and whether we're listening. She's an outspoken activist, willing to take the fight wherever it needs to go. She's committed, independent, and not afraid to initiate a crisis in order to accomplish what is her vision. She embodies a natural blend of authority, individuality, vision, and authenticity. And goddess energy anchors the angles in this chart with Vesta in her 1st house, Pallas on her IC, Ceres in her 7th house, and what did I miss here? Lilith, Juno and Lilith in her 10th house. In my humble opinion, the goddesses are speaking directly through her. But like I said, they're speaking to all of us. These downloads that they're providing are transformational. Like Odysseus, we may feel lost at sea, but we can be guided safely home if we listen and if we act on what we're hearing. The Hopis told us that we're the ones we're waiting for, and I certainly believe that that's true. And in case anyone's wondering, I have Pallas Athena on my midheaven.